in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right.
We've taken control of the oil in the Middle East, the oil that we're talking about.
We're talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create.
We choose truth over facts.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. Still
television. This is what people are saying.
Have you been watching television?
Off in Silicon Valley
It's estimated that 200 million people have died, probably by the time I finish this talk. Agreed that everybody once they inside this. No, my time's up. I'm sorry. America's dead.
Welcome, everybody
Hello.
to Alternative Angle.
Hello. Trying that one this time because hopefully that.
Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much
guys,
for joining us today.
welcome to the channel INN Independent News Network, where you'll find all of your favorites here. Tonight on Monday nights at 9:30 is us, me, Big Man Crab, and my friendly host here, Chris, who's known as 420 on Twitter. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share if you can on whether on Twitter or anywhere else. The more engagement we get, the better, and help this channel grow. So yeah, tonight we're doing a little bit of a mix. It's a little bit of like a slow news week, so we decided to do a little bit of a deep dive into a topic we've been keeping in the bank for a little bit. I feel like, but
yeah, we've been sitting on it a little bit. I mean, it's like there's stuff to talk about, but it's stuff that people already know about. So
it's like the Jack Hysteria thing. Like it's like half of it is a CIA like op, and then then they want to like prosecute the fuck out of him. It's like a whole joke.
It's just so we decided to get away from the circus this week and kind of talk about some stuff, then go into a little bit of a deep dive of some kind of more important topic. So
yeah, and like I like bullshit jobs specifically because I feel like it's not like intense theory, but I feel like it really had a successful impact in highlighting this phenomenon of having a bullshit job. And I'm sure there's plenty of there's plenty of people, in chat or whoever's watching this who can name at least one time or one experience where they've had some sort of job that was completely bullshit and completely useless.
Right. And I mean the thing is where it comes from is that like I've read a bunch of Graeber and have watched a lot of his videos and stuff like that, and the man hates bureaucracy with a bitter passion. So
he's a huge investigator too, so he's not the smartest person, but this is a great book. This is a great book.
I think he writes some good stuff, but he just kind of saw this way back in almost 10 years ago. He was talking about this idea, and he actually thought about before
2013. Yeah, it was the first article, when the first article.
And so first off, I guess I was gonna quote a little bit of the original article, and then kind of go into the definition. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess so I'll just read some of it. I'm only gonna read parts of it. So this is the original article. Basically, he got an opportunity to write about whatever he wanted, and because he had already produced some work, he felt like he was going to, kind of put something out there that people weren't really talking about and felt like was kind of an elephant in the room. So anyway, kind of on the phenomena of bullshit jobs. So this was an article he wrote in 2013, 5 or 6 years before he wrote the book. So in the year 1930, John Maynard Keyes predicted that by a century's end, technology would have advanced sufficiently enough that countries like Great Britain and the United States would have achieved a 15-hour work week. There's every reason to believe he was right. In technological terms, we're quite capable of this, and yet it didn't happen. Instead, technology has been marshaled, if anything, to figure out ways to make us work more. In order to achieve this, jobs have to be created that are effectively pointless. Huge swaths of people in Europe and North America in particular spend their entire working lives performing tasks they secretly believe do not really need to be performed. The moral and spiritual damage that comes from this situation is profound. It is a scar across our collective soul, yet virtually no one talks about this. So what are these new jobs precisely? A recent report comparing employment in the US between 1910 and 2000 gives us a clear picture, and I know one pretty much exactly echoed in the UK. Over the course of the last century, the number of workers employed as domestic servants in industry and in the farm sector has collapsed dramatically. At the same time, professional, managerial, clerical, sales, and service workers tripled, growing from 1/4 to 3/4 of total employment. So he's also talking about the financialization and deindustrialization
And
of the United States.
like I also feel like this article is fairly dated already, and it's only been 10 years.
It's
Like
it's
we've already
super dated, and
we've
it's
already
still
been
like
to
he's
the
dead
beginning.
on.
I did want to mention like because we could like go into a little bit about how the pandemic really like highlighted this whatever this definition of like a non-essential worker is, and then
Yeah,
we just all like collectively decided that it means absolutely nothing.
means nothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
um. Okay, so let me just let me read the rest of this paragraph, and I'll get to it, and then we can pivot. Okay.
okay,
Um.
yeah.
So, in other words, productive jobs have, just as predicted, been largely automated away, even if you count industrial workers globally, including the toiling masses in India and China. Such workers are still not nearly so large a percentage of the world population as they used to be. But rather than allowing a massive reduction of working hours to free the world's population to pursue their own projects, pleasures, visions, and ideas, we have seen the ballooning of not even so much the service sector of the administrative sector, up to and including the creation of a whole new industries like financial services or telemarketing, or the unprecedented expansion of sectors like corporate law, academic and health administration, human resources, and public relations. And these numbers do not even reflect on all those people whose job is to provide administrative, technical, or security support for those industries, or for that matter, the whole host of ancillary industries, dog washers, all-night pizza delivery, that only exist because everyone else is spending so much of their time working in all the other ones. These are what I propose to call bullshit jobs.
It's like customer service jobs too, right? Like because
Like call center jobs are definitely one of them, and like when we talk about the like different classifications, that's
it's because
definitely
there's
like a
yeah,
very
it's just like
specific
there's
one.
value behind like having a person, but like let's
Uh, but yeah, that's part of what happens. So I guess that's like a good time to kind of mention like the definition. So like just so we make sure that we're on the same page here over however long we go for. But like Graeber kind of like goes through the first chapter talking about how he would define a bullshit job. So I'm sure we all kind of have an idea of it, but just to make sure we're on the same page for the sake of this, a bullshit job is a form of paid employment that is so completely pointless, unnecessary, or pernicious that even the employee cannot justify its existence, even though, as part of the conditions of employment, the employee feels obliged to pretend that this is not the case. So, absolutely psychotic psychotic circumstance. So basically you're in a position where your job is fake, or your job is like unfulfilling, doesn't really do anything. And at the same time, you have to like kind of convince yourself that your job has value. So
it's
really soul crushing.
it's the most soul crushing thing, and there's like we'll get into like the anti work thing later, but like there's it's not like a detriment on work itself. It's the fact that the nature of work today in modern society is so crushing, and we do work incredibly long.
Yeah.
But let's get into bullshit jobs. We'll hear it from the man himself right after this quick introductory video of the Wagey Wojak.
Can you come into my... Good morning, Wagey. You're 2 minutes late. Get in, KG.
I work 9 to 5 and I'm
Getting
falling
cagey.
fast.
Easy wagey, getting the cagey.
a wage cock.
Can you come in tomorrow?
Oh my god. Yeah, that's relatable.
That's the wagey, everyone. A little background of like in case anyone I'm not sure if you ever had a job or something, but here's a clip from David Graeber himself telling describing bullshit jobs in his own definition.
Oh, this is the opposite of a bullshit job. I mean, people watch the show. It's not a bullshit job, right? Okay. Bullshit job. This is fun. One of the things that I told myself when the debt book was successful was I was going to take advantage of this to widen my opportunities of expression rather than narrow them. What I mean by that is, I was saying this earlier before the interview, there's this weird thing where if you say something that people decide is interesting and creative and unusual and actually people pay attention to it, say here's a person able to say creative and new things, the world will somehow conspire to ensure that you never do it again. So they will try to make you say the same damn thing over and over and over again. Because you don't get that much money for the book, but you do get money for talks or articles where you just say the same thing in a slightly different format over and over again until you just become this robot that's repeating things. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. One reason I can't afford a house. But nonetheless, I think it's worth it.
So they want you to they wanted you to keep talking about
the same thing.
Right, same thing.
And I could have made a lot of money because, rich people are interested in money. They like that. They'll probably, if I got myself a personal assistant and arranged deals, I could probably give talks all over the place. But I decided I wasn't going to do that. Instead, I'm going to see if I can't do the opposite. Turn this into an opportunity to take all those crazy rants and obsessions and interesting things I've been thinking about that no one would ever print and actually figure out a way to get it out there. And that's why I came up with the thing about the flying cars and technology or my analysis of electronics, all sorts of things like that. But this one, there were some people who formed this new radical newspaper called Strike Mag. And they said, got anything kind of oddball that you got lying around? Maybe that nobody else will print. This is your big opportunity. We'll print anything. So I said, okay, yeah. I had noticed over the years that you keep meeting people who are embarrassed by what they do. When you're at a party, especially if you're someone like me, I'm an anthropologist, and most people think that's kind of interesting. So they'll say, oh, you're an anthropologist. What is that? You go to foreign countries? You live in villages? What's that like? And how do you, so they'll start asking all these questions, and then you say, well, what do you do? And right. And you get them a little drunk, you press them, tell me the truth. I mean, I got this job. I'm the senior East Coast vision manager for this company, and I don't really do anything. I just file reports.
Most tech execs, most of the high level managers on Silicon Valley, they're doing nothing. They're doing absolutely nothing. It's most programmers who are doing literally all of the work.
Most of the professional managerial class doesn't really, I would argue, doesn't really do much of anything. But that's something that Graeber talks about in the book, is that that we have this notion that capitalism is supposed to make things more efficient, but because everybody wants to get their hands in the cookie jar, the way that kind of corporate structure has been developed, which I'll pull up later, I guess, is it encourages this inefficiency. because so many people, like the way that it's structured, like I'm like working at jobs where it's like you work in a call center and everybody's at their desk, and then you have your lead, and then that lead is supervised, and then that supervisor has a manager, and then that manager has a director, and then that director has a VP. It's all like just bullshit. Like you don't need that, but because that's like what people get their MBA for, like it kind of like reinforces itself.
Yeah, and like the whole like libertarian argument behind like suppose like quote unquote like capital, like if it was like truly capitalist it would like benefit themselves. A lot of libertarians like to say like this argument like, oh, they're just government jobs, but they're not just government jobs, it's in the private sector too. And
Yeah.
we're sitting here arguing back and forth on Twitter about like libertarianism versus socialism, and nobody's realizing that pretty much like every corporation in America, or actually every country, every corporation in the world is like pretty much more or less like an appendage of the government, or vice versa.
Well, so think about something like this, and Graeber actually talks about this, is that like there's such the way corporate, like private and government bureaucracies kind of like intersect. It's almost like you can't even tell anymore. So like let's say you had to like make a claim for like Medicaid or something, okay? What are the odds that the people you're calling are actually government employees, or that like they outsource that to somebody, or like because of the way that uh laws and regulations are created, they have these bureaucracies to support and maintain those laws and regulations. But what's also ironic about that is that because we're under fascism, where like the government and corporations like worked hand in hand, we have this situation where not only are the corporations kind of writing the laws, but then they create the bureaucracies to kind of perpetuate those laws anyway. So it's just like it kind of becomes by design.
It's also like part of like the like it is by design, but I feel like part of it is a little bit like of like in complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Like pretty much the government has no capability of doing anything. You can pretty much expect them to do anything that they want, in the form of a subcontractor or a private company. Like they act in. There's actually entire industries. There's actual companies that operate exclusively at the behest of the government, and that's what they sell.
Right. Well, like, okay, so like a towing company, if they're picking up a violation, so what was I going to say? There was something. I might get back to it. I kind of forgot my point, but
yeah.
Yeah.
What he reads, and then we create these committees and pass things back and forth, and it's like, and so I started asking people, like how often, what about do you actually do anything at your job? How many hours a day do you really work? And a lot of people say, well, to be honest, I think what I do, I could probably do it in 3 hours, but a week, but I stretch it out. And
you've seen Office Space, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like I always think like I only work about like
too. Yeah. I can tell you like most of my office jobs have been like this, where it's like the majority of my work can be done within 4 hours, and the rest of it is like bullshitting and just like they're buying your time. Mm-hmm. Essentially, you're just buying. And think of that concept. Like we haven't seen that since slavery. The concept of buying someone's time.
The wage labor is kind of just slavery with extra steps, because we are still under violence to go to work. Like if you look at things like poverty or being homeless as violence, then having to doing wage labor is under coercion. We don't have a choice. So like I don't really buy the argument. People are like, oh, people choose to be homeless. Well, they don't.
Or if it's like drugs or something, like the motherfucker, they gave us the drugs. Like, what do you?
Yeah, exactly.
Who do you think put the drugs in here?
Like, yeah, like I mean, and that's like a whole other thing. It's like freaking like, was it the guys who created OxyContin? Like the fine that they're still getting fined for. They're still trying to figure it out. pales in comparison to how much money they made. So the finance is just being the cost
Yeah,
of doing
you
business.
should watch.
Meanwhile, they kill like what, hundreds of thousands of people every year. Like
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
yeah, you should watch Dope Sick on Hulu.
That sounds
Good.
familiar.
Yeah, no, they did. So Beth Macy did like a whole series, like a whole TV series on it. But I read her book, so I like it's by the same name, Dope Sick.
Mm-hmm.
But she has
Okay.
like drama series, and it's actually like pretty good. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Don't tell my boss, okay? But,
Just read
a
about
computer
Graeber.
could do this whole thing. So you get all these people, and I thought about it. I thought, this is really interesting because this is exactly what capitalism.
The part about
is
meetings.
supposed to do.
So Brad's comment is
You know,
pretty funny
back
because
in
the
the
part
Soviet
about
Union,
meetings
they did
is
stuff like that. They
relatable.
made up all these jobs.
That's
They
like
made a full
that's
employment
also a
program.
huge part of the corporate
Everybody had to have
culture.
Yeah, I actually have a graphic like showing like how much part of the day is like actually working in like a typical office.
Like even like that's such a like a common thing in freaking corporate culture is spending like once you get to like even like lower management, lower like anytime you start getting to like management structure, like you're in meetings like at least like 25 to 50% of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Job whether or not you actually need them to be doing anything. So they would, set up these things where to buy a piece of beef in the store, you'd have to like go to one person to get the beef, and then you got a ticket, and then you have to take the ticket on another line. They just make up employment. But we're doing something like that, except it's all being done by the private sector. Most of these people weren't working for the government. They were, working for private competitive firms.
So hold on, pause it for a second because Brad has a good point here. So 80% of meetings could just be an email, to be honest. And what's funny, and we'll get into it, is that the person who scheduled those meetings is doing a box ticking like skill. Like the person who's creating those meetings is doing something that's in and of itself bullshit. So like they're doing it because they feel like they have to participate in the bullshit, and that skill is pointless in and of itself. Like creating those meetings.
Let's use this opportunity to jump into the graphic here. This is the
okay.
2015 to 2016. And this is the amount of time workers have spent doing their primary job duties, which is decreased from 2016 from 46%. It's already less than half. To 39%.
Wait, so is this all workers, or let me see?
This is office jobs, specifically
office jobs. Okay, so mainly PMC, I guess, or does it also include like call centers?
Tax, like meetings, emails, everything else.
Yeah, dude.
Interruptions, wasteful meetings,
wasteful meetings.
Tax. Yeah.
Productive meetings, 10%.
Yeah.
Emails, 12%. Come on. So let's see. So half the time, so your job could be cut to 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week, if they wanted to, but like they'd rather us work.
Waste of time. That's like part of the.
But see, yeah, there's the thing is like if they had us do less time, then they'd have to do something with all those people doing bullshit tasks. Like, I should have found it, but there's this great quote that Obama does for like The Intercept or something, where they're talking about he's like, why won't you endorse Medicare for all? And Obama says, what's going to happen to all those people who work in the call centers for all those like fielding all the calls for those insurance companies? What's going to happen to all of them? So like Obama like has like a moment where he says the quiet part out loud and admits that one of the reasons that they keep our broken healthcare system is purely for those people to fill up seats and participate in the bullshit. So just crazy admission. I wish I had that video.
Try to see if you can try to see if you can find it. But
I think it was an article. Maybe I can find it. But yeah, if you want to play something.
Jobs where they pay people not to do anything. That's exactly the last thing you'd think that a competitive firm would do.
The opposite of capitalism.
Yeah, except they're capitalist firms. So what's going on?
And they're not changing it. So if it was, if we're really going by the libertarian argument, they would be changing it for efficiency, but they won't.
And
no.
I thought about this, and I thought, well, in fact, these jobs constitute a pretty big sector of our economy. I didn't know how much at the time. I was guessing 20-25%. It turns out it's more. But think about it. Like, there's all these industries that are basically, if they disappeared, it wouldn't make any difference. Telemarketing. If all telemarketers vanished, most people would not complain. I mean, they'd be pretty happy, actually. Corporate lawyers. If you talk to corporate lawyers, I mean, there's one or two big shots who think what they do is important, but the vast majority say, yeah, I mean, it's completely unnecessary. If I didn't have this job, like, the world would not change in any way. And some of these things are jobs where it's not necessary. If nobody did it, nobody would need to do it. One guy needs a corporate lawyer, but somebody else has a corporate lawyer. So armies. Nobody needs an army. No country needs an army unless other countries have armies. Corporate lawyers are a little bit like armies, or telemarketers or like that. But there are other things that aren't even like that. Like all of these middle management guys who just organize meetings or fill out forms or supervise the way other people are filling out forms or create meaningless paperwork and reports. And I suddenly thought, well, this is why people are not working 15-hour days. Because back in the 30s, John Maynard Keynes, wrote an essay called, it was like the economic prospects for the next century, something like that, where he basically said in 100 years, we shouldn't be working more than 15 hours a day. Technology will have improved to the point where we can have a society mainly based on leisure. Work will be a relatively unimportant part of our lives. And I thought, well, the interesting thing is if you look at what jobs existed in the 1930s, they could have done that if we'd kept up the same type of job profile. Because back then there were a lot of people working in industry, there were a lot of people working in agriculture, a lot of domestic servants, all that's gone. A lot of the domestic servants have now been replaced by service jobs in, Starbucks or whatever. But even, we have this idea that, industry, there isn't as many people employed, even if you count the ones in China and other places where the factories have gone. But actually, it's not so much service. I mean, people think it's gone to the service sector. What it's gone to is the administrative, clerical, and supervisory sector. So if you count service and that together, it's gone from, I think, a quarter of the economy, or a quarter of all jobs, to 75% now. So you have all these people administrating people.
What is going on here? And why is this happening?
Exactly, and they're not really doing anything. They're just pretending. And then think about it. Think about all the people, you have some company where all they do is they take German forms and translate them into French forms. It's a completely meaningless job. But then there's all the people who are cleaning their bathrooms and doing the reception and the security for that building, and those jobs are unnecessary too. And how does this happen? Huge swaths of our economy is completely unnecessary.
And I just want to say, I guess the main contention we're trying to make here is the entire economy, all of the jobs, all of the products that you buy, all of the marketing, and all of the language behind it is more or less fake. And maybe not all of it, like 70% of it.
It's up there. I think the tech sector recently, with everybody getting laid off, particularly highlighted that, because there's so much money in the tech sector that's divorced from their production.
That's not even the entire economy. That's just what they.
No, that's what we see right now. That's what we see right now.
Including all the Ponzi schemes and all the multi-level marketing schemes that are going on in the background and black markets that people don't know about.
Right.
And these are all symptoms of capitalism. So it's something that's relevant to the conversation.
I just think that yes, you're right that the tech sector doesn't represent everything, but I think that the reason the tech sector is getting noticed first and why it's cracking first and why it's so obvious is because there was everything in the tech sector is overvalued because it's all built on stock. So people who are doing jack shit getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, not not 50,000, not 60,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do literally nothing. And so obviously you don't need to put on your thinking cap to think about how any system that is paying people that kind of amount of money to literally twiddle their thumbs or play on Facebook or whatever all day, no, that's unsustainable. That can't last.
And just think about that paradox, like the fact that in modern society, at least half of all of the work that's being done right now can be eliminated without
So
any
let me.
difference.
I have a good. Our stream got okay. Interesting. It just said we got booted off YouTube.
Really?
Double check that. But I actually had a graph that I wanted to show that kind of highlights this. So give me 1 second here. So do you see the growth of physicians and administrators? Do you see that graph?
Yeah, it didn't. Indy's insane.
It's still there? Okay.
Yeah, it's still there.
All right. So you see this graph? I like to show this because it really highlights how freaking the PMC has completely overtaken. And this actually shows a couple different things. So first off, obviously, like if you're in a hospital, you should be more worried, like concerned about the like people providing you adequate care than the people pushing paper around. But yet, like as you can see, and this only goes to 2009, so you can imagine 14 years later that it's even worse now. But the ratio from physicians, healthcare workers to actual people working in the freaking corporate offices, it's like what is that? 3,000% more. So 2,800% more than like the physicians. That's crazy. So you can just imagine how bad it is. Like bad it is now. Let me stop sharing that.
Yeah, and it's probably important to go into a little bit of the 5 types of bullshit jobs. So he really goes into depth of like I feel like it's like a little bit important, and I think that you said like you want to dive into this a little bit more as well. But part of this is like a philosophical, like spiritual thing where people we live in like a culture of where our entire dignity and self worth is based off of our jobs and whether or not you're working. And if you're not working, you're deemed as like useless or lazy or a bum, and it's frankly embarrassing and degrading just to be unemployed. So
right,
I'm gonna get into that a little bit, but
did you see Indy's message? Are we getting? Is it like messed up?
I don't know. I don't think it's. So I don't think it's. I mean, we didn't show anything copyrighted. So
I didn't think so. And we're not going to get flagged for taking bits and pieces of other videos, are we?
No, because I mean, everyone does it,
right?
So
all right, because I also have that graph to do the 5 types of jobs. If you'd rather do that,
no, we're good.
A sort of research project where I made up a Gmail account called "Do I Have a BS Job or What?" at gmail.com. And,
it's a little low.
I've been advertising on Twitter. I've got about 250 testimonies.
Yeah, why is that so low?
I have broken them down into 5 basic types. There are flunky jobs, which are basically people who just are there to make someone else look good. A lot of people sitting around offices say they basically don't do anything except like, pass emails to someone and say, no, that's spam, or, they're just like there because if you don't have someone sitting at your desk, you're not actually a real executive. Similar to receptionists at publishing companies where nobody ever calls. They have to be there anyway. Okay, so there's millions of flunky jobs like that. Then you have what I call goons. Goons are people who are basically there to...
I've had many of those.
You don't need them unless somebody else has them. Sort of like armies, right? If nobody had an army, no one would need an army. Same is true of corporate lawyers, telemarketers, all sorts of people like that. So they often say, this is total bullshit. There's no need for this.
And oftentimes the goons, like these ones, so like they'll... people don't often know this, but like especially for like big like corporate firms, oftentimes like hiring you is just a tax break. It's literally just to get like more credit on their tax.
Yeah, I saw something that if you kept your employees hired through COVID, you got like an extra like 20 or 30,000 back from the government per employee that you kept.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
So
yeah, there's an element. There's definitely an element there.
Okay, that's easy. The next one is, I call them duct tapers. Duct tapers are people who are there to fix a problem that does not need to exist and everybody knows it. It'd be sort of like if you have a roof in the house, instead of getting a roofer, put a bucket down and hire someone to like empty the water every half hour. A lot of corporations do that. They'll hire someone just to deal with the damage of the fact that something is badly organized because it's easier than like fixing the problem. So there's millions of those kind of people. Then there's box tickers. Box tickers are people who are there to allow an organization to say they're doing something that they're not doing. There's a lot of that in government, but corporations
So
increasingly
much.
do that too. So one person said, I work at a care home. My job is to like do interviews and collect data on what sort of entertainment people would like to have, which I then tabulate and file. You know, and the problem with box tickers, of course, is that it takes up so much time that you could be spending actually doing the thing. He says, like, you know, I could be entertaining these people, but actually I have to spend 7/10 of my time finding out what they would like to be doing for entertaining and then losing it
Right.
because nobody cares. All right, so that's a box ticker. And then finally, taskmasters, who are basically middle management. They're
Middle
people who are
management.
there either to supervise people who don't need supervising, which is most of middle management. Like, people write to me all the time. They say, like, I'm supposed to be making them work. No, they work all by themselves. And, you know, I have to pretend I'm doing something. So I make up these numbers and I do box ticking or something. And then also make up new bullshit jobs. There's a lot of people who do that.
A job, which is to make up new jobs.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yep.
of people who basically
I know, like,
there to
middle
figure
management
out.
is
There are some
notorious.
people that are there to eliminate bullshit jobs, but realize their own jobs are bullshit because they're not actually going to do it. They're just box tickers.
Yeah.
So
The worst taskmasters are the ones that don't know that they're bullshit, though.
more efficient ways to do things. But in his 15 years, he says he's never seen one of his programs actually adopted because they always figure out it would mean firing someone who's one of their flunkies. And everybody's like, but no, I mean, you know, because like managers and executives are judged basically by how many people they have working under them. We have a really, really twisted idea of the value of work. You know, there was a time that people thought that work produces something, you know. It is there, you know, everything is all value comes from labor. This is very.
And at this point, work has essentially reached an inverse of what its economic value is. You're really just, if you're working a job that's not benefiting anyone but instead hurting yourself, how can you come to like accept that situation as a moral good? You know, they I don't like some they genuinely believe like this is how things ought to be, that we just reward useless and destructive behavior just to punish people for
the work as a virtue crowd. I don't get it at all. Like, you work because you're supposed to work because that's what you do, and then you like meet like that boomer every once in a while who's like, I haven't missed a day of work in 45 years. What you gonna do about it, kid? Get off your lazy ass. And it's like,
and the
I don't know.
producers they don't have any autonomy at all whatsoever. It just vesting more and more power to managers, supervisors.
Theory of value is almost universally accepted in the 19th century, but they had a very silly focus on factory work, you know, craftsmen, like, you know.
See, and that's crazy too, because I just thought about this, but like, I guess this is a good time to like go into my anecdote, I guess. But like, I've worked at multiple call centers. I worked at Comcast. I've worked at freaking Dish. Worked at Spectrum, and like, it's just layers upon layers of bullshit jobs. So like, here I am answering phones for 8 hours a day, like as a goon, like as he defines it, as be like a goon, you know, doing freaking sales, trying to get people to buy shit or get people to not buy shit. That was even a more not cancel their shit. So like, I did retention, which I don't know if you've ever tried to cancel like your cell phone or cancel your freaking internet or anything like that. You don't go to a cancellation department, you go to retention, which is basically like salespeople with bigger commissions. And it's their job to be like, no, don't do that, don't cancel. And the only reason that job exists, like explicitly, is because every other competitor has a retention department. If like nobody had a retention department, they could just have an automated service. Oh, you want to cancel? Press 1 and take $20 off your bill. Have a good day. You know, like,
yeah, a lot of this is like due to just basic like unoptimization, and like I feel like a lot of like my jobs have been a form of bullshit in some way.
Well, so I think it's a little bit more insidious, and I have like another video later where like I kind of believe that like they saw that if we had too much free time on our hands, we'd be like capitalism sucks and
Yeah.
want to like change it.
Yeah.
So there's two things
You can't
actually.
strike when you're working 40 hours a week.
Yeah, like
time for it.
deprive us of time, but also
kids,
like
dinner. What are you
like
gonna do?
the other issue is that the profit goes down. Like Marx talks about this. Profit goes down when you replace human labor with like inorganic labor. So like AI and like automation and stuff, it actually makes their profit margins go down. So they have an incentive to keep people working instead of replacing them with robots.
Yeah, because there's
no surplus value anymore. And because you're displacing workers, you're actually like creating more cost for either the state or whatever because that person no longer has a job.
We're probably not at the point yet where we can like fully automate everything, but I think like the main reason we do that is because like, there's still a main value in humanity. Like for instance, like you could just have every cashier be a self checkout lane. That'd be a very bad idea.
I already see they're trying to do that for a while. They just like have like I'll go to a grocery store and they'll have like 10 lanes closed, but the self checkout, which has 8 lanes in it, is open. But there's 2 people, 2 associates, like helping out with the self checkout. So, like that's a
contradiction. You know what they're doing? They're standing there.
Yeah, they're just
and watching.
So tell me that's not like bullshit in and of itself, or like creating this kind of like weird system where on the one hand, like they want people like, I wonder who was the person who figured out that it's more cost effective to pay 2 people, $15, $17 an hour or whatever to man this self-checkout and process people going through the door dealing with all their bullshit because they can't do the self-checkout on their own. Or then have them like run registers. Like,
yeah,
like they must have did the math and they're like, it's still better for us to just hassle people and make them do the job.
Maybe it's because like they want like the of inconvenience. I don't know. Like I told you, I think I told you this one time. But there was one time in high school, I was a security guard for like this old people's home, like some like bumfuck New Jersey, in the middle of New Jersey. But so I would just drive up my car to the gate every day, and there would basically be no one going through at all. So I didn't really have to do much, and I really and honestly, I sat in my car. I did a lot of homework, and to be frank with you, most of the time I played Super Smash Bros. Before emulator on my laptop, the entire time, almost the entire time.
Well, it's like the example that Graeber gives in the book, where it's like these small businesses will hire like somebody to run the desk, and they'll get maybe 1 or 2 people coming in the entire day. But like that person, the job doesn't get taken seriously unless they have like a secretary working there, unless they have somebody like there answering phones. Like they can't do it on their own. So it's like the business doesn't like have its air of professionalism if it doesn't have security there. Like even though no one shows up, they're like, well, we got to have it because everybody else has it because like we're supposed to.
Yeah, and to anyone in chat, feel free to drop your bullshit job stories because there's plenty of them. I mean, I have a couple excerpts pulled up here, but
cool.
These are a couple from the first chapter of the book, but these are so basically he writes the email in 2013, right? And then a bunch of people send him emails, sending him examples of like, oh yeah, like this is happening to me too. And the reason he wrote the book is because he got so many emails in response to that article. Yeah. And realized that there's this bigger phenomenon going on of a bunch of people having bullshit jobs. So like this woman here, The only full-time job I ever had in human resources in the private sector engineering firm was wholly not necessary. It was there only because the HR specialist was lazy and didn't want to leave his desk. I was an HR assistant. My job took, I shit you not, 1 hour a day, an hour and a half max. The other 7 or so hours were spent playing 2048 or watching YouTube. Phone never rang, data entered in maybe 5 minutes or less, and I got paid to be bored. My boss could have easily done my job, but yet again, fucking lazy turd. Here's one from Ophelia.
HR is just a funny department, like kind of bullshit in and of itself. So that's kind of funny to me.
Ophelia, we are divided between two organizations and two buildings. My boss, the boss of the whole place, in fact, goes to the other building. I have to fill in a form to book a room for her every time. It is absolute insanity, but it certainly keeps the receptionist over there keep very busy and therefore indispensable. It also makes her appear very organized, juggling and filling all this paperwork. It occurs to me that this is what they really mean in job ads when they say they expect you to make your office procedures more efficient, that you create more bureaucracy to fill the time.
Unbelievable. See, and that's like another thing that he talks about is that like
this guy's
people like when they like people caught up in their bullshit jobs and don't and like it doesn't click for them or they like have a hard time with it, people will like create routines that are bullshit out of like a desperation to kind of give their jobs more meaning.
Yeah, people love routine. People want to work. I mean, I was going to share that quote by Gross.
Yeah. But people also genuinely feel bad. Like there's plenty of people who like will feel bad about not having anything to do when their job basically like tells them not to do anything. You know, like it's just crazy. Oh,
my job as a cold caller was to call these people, not to try to sell them stocks, but to rather, I did telemarketing for a little bit too, but rather to offer free research material on a promising company that was about to go public, emphasizing that I was calling on behalf of a broker. That last point was especially stressed to me during my training. The reasoning behind this was that the brokers themselves would seem to the potential client to be more capable and professional if they were to be so damn busy making money that they needed to make a call for them. There was literally no other purpose of the job than to make my neighbor, the broker, appear to be more successful than he actually was. I was paid $200 a week, cash, literally from the broker's wallet, for making him look like a high dollar. But this didn't just make social capital for the broker with regards to his clients. In the office itself, being a broker with your old cold caller was a status symbol, and an important one with such hyper-masculine, hyper-competitive office environment. I was some kind of totem figure for him, owning me to mean the difference between his getting a meeting with a visiting regional head or not, but for the most part, it just put him on a slightly higher rung on the social ladder of the workplace.
So that guy was a flunky, just doing calls that anybody else could do. Embarrassing. And like
copy and paste.
Know so many people like that who like they make those choices because of the way it appears to everybody else. It's just so crazy how we perpetuate that.
No, most people are working just to look like they're working.
Yeah.
I was given one responsibility, watching an inbox that received emails in a certain form of employees asking for tech help, and copy and paste it into a different form. Not only was this a textbook example of an automatable job, it actually used to be automated. There was some disagreement between the managers that led to a standardization that nullified the automation. So they just refuse to do it. They don't want to. Concierge is one of my buildings. Half my time was spent pressing a button to open the front door and for residents and saying hello as they passed through the lobby. If I didn't get that button in time and a resident had to open the door manually, I'd hear about something from my manager. And see, they can't get him. They can't get a human face on a robot to do that, which is the problematic part, or at least not a realistic one yet. Maybe they could do a hologram,
a concierge, like a automated concierge service. So I think it's a little different with like human contact jobs, but replaced. But like I saw years ago Google was doing, like, you could do this thing where you could tell the like assistant to place a call for you to like schedule like a hair appointment or something like that, and it would do the calls for you. This was like 5-6 years ago. So like I think the time is coming where like interaction over the phone will be largely automated, but like yeah, it's just kind of a bummer for like people who work for that class of people who just expect to be waited on like that hand to foot, and like their whole existence is to kind of like be bullshit on purpose.
Yeah, and I want to get into the wage cuck slavery bit a little bit later, but so guarding an empty room. I just got one more.
This one's ridiculous.
I worked as a museum guard for a global security company museum where one exhibition room was left unused. My job was to guard the empty room, ensuring no museum guests touched, well, nothing in the room, to ensure nobody set any fires. To keep in mind, sharp and attention undivided, I was forbidden any form of mental stimulation like books, phones, etc. As nobody was ever there, I was sat there and twiddled my thumbs for 7.5 hours, waiting for the fire alarm to sound. If it did, I calmly stood up and walked out. That was it. That sounds miserable.
So that sounds absolutely soul crushing. That sounds like the worst thing in the world. But what's funny is kind of going back to what we were saying about how like libertarians kind of think that bureaucracy and kind of this waste only exists in the government. That example actually kind of highlights, like, I'm sure that there's a regulation there that compelled that guy to stand there in front of an empty room. There was probably some law that made it so he had to be there, so like it was still the government, like it was still like a private and a government thing at the same time. It's kind of how I see it, because the rule, like, why was that guy standing there? Like maybe the like museum had a good reason, but maybe the museum had to do that because there was a law written where it was like you can't have unattended rooms for these sort of things, or
No, it's like I said, it's like more or less like governed by either legal reasons,
right,
financial, whether it's like tax breaks, or like humanitarian, where they just want like a human to be the face of something.
That, I mean,
And
like
they
standing outside a freaking empty room sounds like a freaking MK Ultra
listen,
experiment.
I'm from advertising. Do you know how many scam jobs I see where it's like they want like a TikTok influencer or some shit. They want like someone on camera to be like their personal like advertising.
Really?
So, yeah, like at least hire an actor or something. Like I hate like this is the problem with small business is like I feel like they wing everything. They just don't know. None of them know what they're doing. So like they're just guessing.
Right.
And it's a frustrating experience because I'd rather work with people who already know what they're doing so that I can learn. I don't want to like if I can already learn on myself. Like
you're teaching them at this point.
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's really the generational divide with technology is really like fucked a lot, but at least it's worth a lot of money.
That's a good point.
But not only that, like going off of this, like how the whole economy is fake, jobs are fake. Your job also probably most of the time really does nothing. We showed that chart earlier where within the 8-hour office day, you're actually doing productive work for less than 50% of the time.
Right. And then and then you throw like the meetings in there and like it's kind of like what I was touching upon with like the call centers. I guess I can pull up this. Or are you going to show another video, or I was going to pull something up really quick?
Yeah. Do you want? I'll show this real quick.
Okay.
You pull up all your stuff. And then
what do you do for a living? I'm not talking about your job title or your daily tasks. I'm talking about what you actually do, what you actually create, what you improve, what you contribute. For some of you watching, this question might be pretty easy to answer. But for those of you who find yourself working as a middle manager, overseeing a human resources team, insurance underwriting company, well, it might be a little harder. In the last century, service jobs have gone from representing less than a quarter of all jobs to now representing nearly 80% of workers. Now, when we think of service jobs, we think of people serving us coffee, finding us a pair of pants out of the back, or carrying our bags to the hotel room. Sure, they might be an unnecessary luxury for the people using these services, but it's still pretty easy to see that they do produce value, be it in the form of a nice cup of coffee, a fresh new outfit, or promptly delivered luggage, without the need of a physio appointment the next day. But you see, the thing is, the service sector is far more broad than the name implies. It encompasses everybody from call center salespeople to CEOs. In fact, it's difficult these days to find a job outside the service sector, specifically because those roles require special certifications. Remember that for later because it's important. But the growth of the self-serving service sector and the subsequent rise in bullshit jobs that came with it seems a bit odd. Surely, the efficient free market would weed out these individuals that are contributing nothing, punishing the companies that bear their salary expenses, while rewarding the more efficient organizations that do without them, right? Well, no. And to understand why, it's time to learn how money works in the modern day to perpetuate the existence of people who work to nothing but justify their own existence. And before we get into this quirk of modern advanced capitalism, we need to first look at Soviet communism. The Soviet Union was built on the idea of noble labor. The state said that work was honorable and dignified. The word Soviet loosely translates to a workers' council, and people took pride in their labor above all else. This caused problems when there wasn't enough work to go around amongst everybody. The drive for full employment meant that some people were given tasks that were obviously totally redundant. Factory managers hired as many people as they possibly could, because it was honorable to oversee the labor of so many of your comrades. They also feared that if they didn't give people jobs now, they wouldn't be able to get the people they did need in the future. This worker hoarding, as it became known, meant that some people were getting jobs like counting endless inventories of nuts and bolts. Now, obviously, there are huge differences between the modern Western world and 1950s Russia, but there are also some concerning similarities. The theory of totally unnecessary jobs really started to gain traction after the anthropologist David Graeber published a book on bullshit jobs, in which he outlined 5 broad categories of jobs that have become more and more common. The first are what he called the flunkies. Think people like doormen, receptionists, chauffeurs, and assistants. These people exist to make other people feel better about themselves and could easily be replaced with some kind of technology. That's if they are really needed at all. Then there are the duct tapers.
This might be the wrong video. You can check your thing. I thought I use this for reference. I wasn't like, but
these are the people who work to alleviate problems that could very easily be fixed permanently.
We talked about
Think
currency
someone like an
later on.
inventory manager that just so happens to have the system permissions to update stock levels in a warehouse, where that could have been done automatically or at the very least shared amongst floor staff. In his book, Graeber talks of a duct taper whose entire job was fixing the mistakes made by an apparently brilliant statistician. In reality, this star employee was actually hopeless, and the duct taper had to fight with bureaucracy to get his mistakes fixed before they could do any damage. This example shows that the solution to the problem is not always getting rid of the person in the bullshit job, because the duct taper themselves was probably contributing.
So I was just going to show something really quick. Let me pull this up. But just kind of like showing corporate structure, because like I was just thinking about this while we were going over it. But like call centers, this is kind of like a really vague and how it goes out. But like if the employees in the call center, and this is everybody in the call center is in the service industry, so it's exactly what he's talking about. But so the people on the phones, they have bullshit jobs. All the sales agents, all the retention agents, everybody, like all the like salespeople have bullshit jobs. But then their leads have bullshit jobs because like the majority of salespeople are like pretty, like if you know what you're doing, like they can manage themselves. And since the jobs are on commission, they usually have a vested interest on like trying to put the time in, you know? So like it's just the entire hierarchy is bullshit from the bottom to the top. So it just kind of breeds this really kind of toxic culture where people get burned out all the time. And I don't know if did my screen freeze up?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, someone was chatting. Maybe it's like the internet or something, but I'm not sure.
But yeah, so the entire thing, like you work at call center, if like you'll see if you stay there over a year, that maybe like half the people that you worked with like aren't there anymore. 3/4 of the people you work with aren't there anymore. Just because it's so crushing, and you have a whole culture where everybody's kind of like being really antagonizing to the people that they're supposed to be kind of helping. Like you're not really working for the customer. You're always you're always interested in metrics. Then you have freaking your supervisors who like, because they're getting,
they turn into a game on purpose. I remember like in my very first job in ShopRite, they rewarded people with like these like Superman shirts if you scan 22 items per minute. And
so it's.
I was 16 and I really wanted that Superman shirt because you don't have to wear that shitty fucking red polo anymore.
Yeah.
So I wanted the Superman shirt so bad. It made me like scan like a maniac. It made me like try to figure out convoluted ways to stop the timer.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because there's an actual position in call centers where it's literally this person gets paid, I don't know, 50, 55K a year, something like that, to literally come up with strategies to incentivize workers, like mainly salespeople, doing like anything from giving out food to doing like competitions, doing raffles, different stuff to give away. Their entire job is to figure out like a balance to incentivize workers to work harder because they don't want to pay their workers more money. So they'd rather pay somebody $55,000 a year to come up with bullshit strategies, that little like token achievements to give to an agent here and there, than to actually pay them all like better wages.
Yeah.
Like than to get them to work harder, like to get them like it's ironic you say that because people actually get paid to come up with ideas to do that stuff like full time.
I thought this video was interesting. This was the one that I was looking for.
This extraordinary fixation with work. And yet with every technological revolution we've had, more people have gone out of work, and we've been very resourceful and very creative in terms of creating jobs and things for them to do. Most of us work in this great amorphous blob of a thing called the services sector. Within that services sector space, there's an awful lot of work, which I think is work we've simply created because we feel that humans cannot live without organized work. And also because we organize our societies on that basis. Suddenly now in these societies based on fossil fuels and ever more productive machines, there actually isn't a lot of very good work for everybody to do, yet we insist on full employment. And it is a product of the fact that we are doing work just for work's sake. And these jobs are fundamentally, in many senses, bullshit.
So I kind of...
Ever since people first...
I was just going to say, I kind of take issue with him asserting that like people just like this kind of like organized structure. That's not true at all. This structure is terrible. It's just like, I think it's a function of capitalism, the kind of like corporate hierarchy. That's not something people like. That's something that will like I kind of like I said earlier, like it gets more people's like hands in the cookie jar. It gives people like that typical structure that you see everywhere, like that you see in these huge corporations, like kind of can give like an idea of what the associate or whatever, that employee can expect to achieve over the next like 20, 30 years, you know? So it's almost like a blueprint for them to kind of like work towards. So I don't necessarily think it's something that people like are drawn to. I think it's just something that like we're so used to because we live in this system where that like this like especially recently, like I don't think this guy would be saying the same thing 30 years ago because like the rise of the like professional managerial class wasn't like this 15, 20 years ago.
He may be referring to like the nature of like working itself. I mean, perhaps people enjoy like their certain like particular schedules, their routines. I don't know.
Do you okay? Because I think, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like Americans take the concept of working as a virtue very seriously. And like,
yeah, it's like I said before, if you get shamed and like it's embarrassing.
Right, but is that an American thing? Is that a Western thing?
That's like exclusively an American thing. Yeah, I can tell you, like, in Europe, they don't take work as seriously as we do. Not nearly as close. Like they're very relaxed and like they got
the siestas in freaking Spain, Brazil.
Yeah, we can talk a little about like. Let me double check this video real quick. I thought I had something in here that I wanted to
worked out how to convert energy stored in fossil fuels into work, putting it through machines that translate that steam into.
But we can get into wage cuckery. That's
turning engines and turbines. They've imagined a world in which technology, in which external energy use spares us from future labor. from Benjamin Franklin all the way through to the early 20th century, thinkers and dreamers alike all articulated visions of this kind of post-work world. But nobody did this better than John Maynard Keynes. He was, of course, the man who transformed economics. And in 1930, John Maynard Keynes wrote an essay called The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And in that essay, he decided to take wings into the future, to go out of the miseries of this depression that everybody was enduring and imagine what the economic world would look like 100 years in the future. And in this essay, he famously predicted that by 2030, by more or less now, we'd be working no more than 15 hours in a week. Why would we do this? He said that based on calculations of productivity and capital growth and technological advancements, he believed that we would have come to an economic utopia where everybody's basic needs would be very easily met. Now, interestingly enough, we passed the thresholds that Keynes identified and thought we'd only reach about now. We passed those thresholds in 1980. Yet still, interestingly enough, we continue to work pretty much the same number of hours that people did back in 1930 when Keynes was alive. Now, if you ask an economist, why do we work? They will say, it is to solve the economic problem. And what is the economic problem? They will say the economic problem is the problem of scarcity. Then you say, well, what the hell is the problem of scarcity? And they'll say the problem of scarcity is this. It is simple. In the olden days, when we were hunters and gatherers, we endured this horrendous struggle for survival in an eat-or-be-eaten world. And the transition to farming, of course, changed everything. The societies that developed agriculture became considerably more productive than the societies that were still living a life of foraging. And as a result of that, we evolved, we became hardwired to have these infinite needs. Having enough food today was simply a trigger to worry about having more for tomorrow, so we became accumulators, surplus creators. In other words, because it was evolutionarily advantageous, we developed infinite needs. There's no debating the fact that this extraordinary
that's not what happened.
That was instilled into us.
Yeah, this is sort of like a very
that's a really liberal take, because that's not.
Yeah,
that's not what happened.
I feel like it's a very like binary definition.
I mean, I can kind of see, but like, I don't think consumerism is something that like we just want.
The main point was really about how we started with human agriculture, and like that was basically the nature of work was just farming. And once like work has like evolved past the nature of hard labor and like actually like reproducing goods, like America throws out most of its food.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's bad. And perfect example of like bullshit jobs, like the people who stand outside dumpsters and making sure that people don't steal the like food that got thrown out. I've heard of that one. But yeah, that's kind of like what I was telling you on like DMs earlier, was that like the definition of labor as it appears to like leftists and communists and whatever as like kind of needs to be redefined, because we have this service sector that where, you know, half the country, 3/4 of the country doesn't really produce anything. Like, so how do you define what are like where the value is if we don't really create anything? It's just, it's very, I think it's a lot more complex than, I don't know. I haven't read all fucking Marx, so I don't know what else is in there, but like, I don't know. I think the definition that we're given of labor is kind of inadequate today.
I mean, how about I show some of this, the Silicon Valley stuff, the tech stuff, just to go into, and this is an interesting article too. You said that medieval peasants worth less than.
yeah. So I just think that's freaking crazy that like people don't realize that. Sure, like maybe we have some like material, our way of life is a little bit like improved in terms of like the goods and stuff that we have available to us, but like they had the work-life balance. It's crazy.
That's insane. 160 hours more? You know how much of a life that is?
That's a month. It's another month of work.
Yeah.
I mean, 40 hours, yeah, that's at least like a month. But you can see in that graph, we're not even like, we're kind of like on the middle to high end of like, I don't know if it says every country or just like Western ones or whatnot. Which one's at the top? I can't even see it.
Mexico.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. And I wonder how much of that is like a result of freaking imperialism and
Oh
colonialism.
no, it's 100%.
Like they're freaking working like 16 hours a day to freaking make American goods.
I did want to do like a segment eventually about like how I think we're gonna coup Mexico pretty soon.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I've seen like that
Can't
news
have
and stuff. It's
they
kind of
can't have
sketchy.
that guy running that close to the country. It's too close. That's like that. This is like a Ukraine, like Yanukovych kind of situation for the United States. They're gonna coup the fuck out of Mexico.
Dude.
Just saying.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Um,
I get where you're coming from, but yeah, topic for another day for sure.
I also wanted to share this too, because I think Indy actually covered a little bit of this yesterday on How Did We Miss That, about the amount of like tech layoffs that are happening, and there's there's a couple others like in like Bandcamp.
So there's as of today, since the beginning of 2023, 170,000 employees in freaking Silicon Valley have been laid off. According to that layoffs.fyi. So that's
And
not
AI
like
is only making this worse, by the way. It's
what's
only
that?
going to make AI is going to replace like a lot of jobs in the tech sector. You can only expect even more layoffs happening in the coming years.
So I was actually just thinking about that before we did that, before we started this show, because I was kind of thinking about how AI is going to kind of replace a lot of that stuff.
That's like a whole new element of this that has just like I feel like this theory just keeps on evolving and evolving as like technology innovates. Like we had this in 2018, 2013 to 2018, and the pandemic happened, and now we have AI, and like who knows what's next.
I just like I this is why I think that like feudalism is the end. Like you see, do you ever see those ads where they're trying to build like self-contained like superstructures where everybody lives in? Like they got the 15-minute city thing, but there's like apparently like there's this thing that's getting VC funding in like Saudi Arabia or something that looks like a giant cube. Like it's called like Neom or something. But like that the like feudalism's coming because they're gonna run out of tasks for people to do. So, and that's, I mean, I know we're gonna talk about like a UBI a little bit, but like there, that's what's gonna happen is like if they take on automation or like AI to that point, and to the point where it is actually displacing people, because we're still at the point where the capitalists can still get away with creating a lot more automation and still. Did we just lose sound? Did I just lose sound? Oh, that was weird. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So up until this point, up until where we've seen like with AI, like OpenAI and ChatGPT and stuff like that, like the capitalists were still able to take technology and automate it and use that automation and still make us work, so their productivity just skyrocketed. You know, like I have that graph. Let me see if I can pull up that graph.
Well, since
I don't
we're
know what.
talking about like the tech sector and we are talking about AI, maybe the UBI point was the short point. I mean, I agree with this book nearly 90%. It's the very ending that I would ignore, which is like
He
very.
only puts in. It's only like talks about it for a page, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but like no, but like this is his proposed solution. I mean, I mean, we can kind of like get into like whatever that looks like, but I don't think UBI is it. Um, there's
So I think, I mean, he's talked about that where he presented the kind of UBI thing. He was like, the idea isn't that people work and there's UBI. It's the idea that everybody gets a UBI, and if they want to work, they can. But if they don't want to work, they can pursue other things. So it wasn't meant to be. I don't know if how, like, I haven't read the book in a minute, like how he kind of wraps that up, but the problem is that, like, I don't think UBI would ever be implemented because they don't want people thinking for themselves. I think at the end of the day, like,
You don't think they would do it in like an Andrew Yang type style where, like, I remember Andrew Yang last year, he wanted to implement it, and on his platform he basically made it so that you, in order to get that, like at the 1K a month, you would opt out of Social Security and like
fucking
everything.
crazy.
Like, you're fucking insane if you would.
So yeah, like, Yang's a fucking psycho, but I mean, there's like some issues that obviously, like, if everybody's getting UBI, then what's going to happen is, like, you're going to see the landlords just freaking leech off of that money. You know? Oh, everybody else is getting an extra 45, 50 grand a year? All right, well, suddenly rent went up freaking 30, 40%. Oh, look at that. You know? So they're going to, like, the money's just going to get extracted right away. So
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, I just see a lot of problems with it, and you can even like talk about like the laziness. Like, there's no like laziness argument. It's more so like, even under like an anti-capitalist or a communist government, people still work. The nature of work itself is not bad.
I don't know. Like, I kind of am of, like, the more anti-work, like most of the stuff that people use and, like, can be produced can be automated away. Like, 100%. There's, like, no reason, like you said, there's certain jobs where, like, people want that human touch or that human contact and, like, are irreplaceable. But I don't think there's a reason why, like, 8-10 billion people need to work. I don't see the value in that at all. So, like, I'm kind of more of the opinion that, like, if we had the option to kind of focus on our development on, like, what the workers actually wanted to, like, develop, like, oh, we want more free time for ourselves, we want more free time for our families, we want more, like, time to be able to, like, invest in ourselves and do our hobbies and stuff like that. First thing it would do is try and automate away all those, like, menial jobs so we had more opportunity to, like, spend for ourselves. So I think the idea of, like, getting rid of work is like a noble cause.
Yeah, I mean, like, so there's two very fringe and extreme aspects of this conversation, right? There's the Reddit anti-work crowd, and then there's the Gary V's hyper productivity waste.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, this mindset that
Two very
we have
opposite
to work
sides.
40 hours a week, and that it's like healthy or normal that your work and your job takes up the majority of your life and the majority of your time, and so that the only pleasures that you're able to accept for yourself are these, like, futile, like, little, like, consumer pleasures, like buying things. It's hard to see, like, this not all set up perfectly in the way that certain people do. Certain people want it to be. So, like,
right, they want you spending on working and, like, get your one vacation a year, get, like, your freaking, spend all your money on freaking rent, food, and, like, your iPhone, and, like, subscription services, and, like, pay your taxes. That's, like, where it kind of is all revolving around, I feel like. I mean, the people who are into this kind of wage cuckery, like the, like, grind set people, I think they...
Did you have a clip of one? Yeah, you did one.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Sigma grind set.
Yeah.
Be embarrassed with my... I don't know how you guys could even live on that number. If I made 400 grand a year, I would be embarrassed with myself as a husband, a father, basically as a human being. 400 grand. How do you make sense of $35,000 a month? You have not done the math, because you cannot live on 400 grand a year. Anybody can make 400 grand a year. All you got to do is show up. I don't know.
What?
Bro,
What?
yeah, so that was actually a pretty funny tweet. There were people like it actually the person who posted the tweet was like, this is actually anti-capitalist propaganda because what the fuck? Like nobody's like, oh, it's easy to make 400K. Like what? You just got to show up. Like completely divorced from reality. Like what are you spending your money on to be in a position where you're like, oh, I just wake up and make 400K? Like
And
just
so, like, I feel like, we're sort of all over the place where we have, where I wanted to connect this to the anti-work thing. A little bit of a throwback to,
yeah, so the grind set stuff, that's more of just like a funny thing because
no, but
it's just like it's a total parody of kind of like this like crypto bro kind of like
it's all internet argument. That's
mentality.
all it is. I mean, even this anti-work thing is like, this is just like,
terminally online freaking
and so is the Gary V types though. Like they're also
that's like the crypto bro types, dude.
Yeah, they're both just terminally online. They've never touched grass.
Million subscribers. Joining me now is the person who operates this anti-work group, Doreen Ford. All right, so Doreen, why do you like the idea of being home, not working, but still getting paid by corporate America?
Yeah.
What?
So there's some misconceptions about the movement.
Yeah, that's not part of the argument.
A movement where we want to reduce.
How's the volume? Is it not? Is it okay?
It's pretty low.
Oh, shit. I got a booster.
I mean, this guy was kind of a clown for even entertaining to like go and be interviewed on Fox News. It's like you're just asking to be made a fool of.
There we go. This might be really loud.
The amount of work that people feel like they're forced to do, and so we want to still put in effort. We want to put in labor, but we don't want to necessarily be in a position where we feel trapped. You just quoted from Office Space, where that person feels very trapped in their job. I think we're calling for a society where there's less of that. But yeah, absolutely, people still
like. These guys are just reactionaries. They're not really trying, like, when I say anti-work, I'm not coming from anti-work in a, like, when I say that I'm like anti-work, I'm not saying it from a position of being a capitalist. Where, like, this guy, he's kind of like talking about the idea of being subsidized.
Even communists do they agree with the nature of work?
I just think, like, what do you mean that everybody should work because everybody should work? But like you saw that thing, like the Soviet Russia, like having crazy unemployment and people were just working for the sake of work and it wasn't really like meaningful. People would just hire tons of people because they were supposed to maintain zero employment. So like you kind of get into a situation where just because people are working doesn't mean that it's like valuable. Like if you have 10 people doing something what like one or two people could do because you have to have unemployment at zero, then like then you're like depriving people of their like freedom, essentially. I just think that we can be a little bit more imaginative in saying that there's always going to be a reason for people to work, because I think we could have like automated away most of work. Like, I think at the end of the day, people would have ended up doing things that they enjoy doing, and people could still like find value in doing tasks that other people didn't want to do, but we don't have to be in a position where everybody has to work. Like, that's like your ticket to being part of society. I don't really believe that. I don't think, and like that also kind of goes into the comparison of like, well, what's like a caring, like the kind of like the caring jobs, like a mother, like she's working, but is like her job enough to, like, in the eyes of like a communist society, is her being a mother and like raising children enough? Like, is that like, is she supposed to bring a paycheck? So it kind of gets back to
Yeah,
the
no,
meaning of
like
labor.
I feel like in like a communal society, you would have those societal like cushions and benefits in place. Like healthcare would be free, absolutely. Perhaps you would like have like higher wages to incentivize. I'm not exactly sure, but um, um,
I'm just more of the belief that if people had tons of free time, they would actually be more productive because they would be able to focus on the things that they were passionate about.
I agree.
Like we don't need to have people like running freaking cash registers. We could automate the entire process if we wanted to. If we didn't need to have people scanning their own food, if we really wanted to automate the process, we could automate it. Have everybody like freaking put it on a conveyor belt and it would be done for them. But like they still want those two people. So I don't know. I think you get into kind of like a weird situation where like work as a virtue is kind of like something that comes across as like a position that's made to kind of like give legitimacy to like a government, because like, oh, you don't get your shit unless you put your time in, unless you're like a tax base, something like that. I don't know. I think that viewpoint kind of doesn't come across enough from like a human aspect, if that makes sense. I don't think I don't think people naturally.
I agree with you. Like I think, well, I'm not like on the libertarian end where I believe that everyone would literally just sit around and
No, that's not. I don't. I'm
play
not.
video games
I'm
all
not
day.
asserting. I'm not asserting that. But
Yeah,
like,
I'm
here's
not
the thing.
saying that either.
Here's the thing. It's not. Why is it? Why is it your problem if that's what somebody wants to do?
Yeah, right. I mean, I mean,
So,
for the
oh,
most
oh,
part, and like from what I've seen, and even in some of these like weebs, basement dwellers, a lot of these like they either like draw or they have like some sort of like separate hobby that's like different from like video games and anime and stuff like that.
right.
And that's like why I really wanted to highlight this quote from this German psychologist Carl Gross, uh,
Hmm.
where he wrote about the children of pleasure, pleasure in children, and linked this to basically like just being the cause of predictable effects upon the world. So the pleasure of being the cause. Um,
Hmm.
and so like, people want to work. They want to be responsible for something, and they want to feel like an individual, and they want to feel like they've made something happen. And I think
Right.
that's like an intrinsic nature that's
I
come
think
from.
I absolutely, and I think the book in a big way highlights that, because like he goes through and talks a lot about like, why are people, if they're getting these easy jobs, why are they so miserable? Like, why do they hate their work? Like, why aren't people just like jumping for joy that they have the easiest job that they're getting paid 100K a year for? And it's because like part of that is they want value for what they do. They want to be fulfilled. They want to feel like they're making a meaningful contribution to society.
Yeah.
Want to do things. They just want to do things where they feel rewarded and they feel like they're in a good spot in their life, and that their job respects them and stuff like that. There's varying.
So
opinions
so Doreen, but you're not being forced to work. This isn't slave labor. You've applied for a job. You've agreed to the terms and conditions of the employment. And you can walk away from that job at any time and quit.
This is a disingenuous argument.
I don't understand really what this is about.
Yeah, which like it's a shame that this is on
Completely
Fox
missing.
News of all things, because Jesse Waters would have been.
It's a pretty disingenuous argument.
Yeah, I mean, like if you can't just quit your job, like people have to pay.
Well, and that's kind of my argument is like, if it's you're kind of coerced to work, you don't have an option. So like this weeb is kind of like, oh cool, you have a subreddit, but like clearly you were not.
Why did you pick this guy? Why did they pick this guy?
Except it sounds like maybe people are just being lazy. Are you encouraging people to be lazy?
So I think laziness is a virtue in a society where people constantly want you to be productive 24/7, and it's good to have rest.
Okay, there's like merit in this conversation. That's the thing. Like he has like some salient points, but the delivery is so bad. It is so bad. This
Yeah, he just
how
doesn't.
old
He's
is
just
he?
like
Like
got the
17?
microwave on the background.
Did they get a high score to do this?
Well,
Why can't he
it's the
have an articulate
subreddit.
thought?
Like,
Like
it's the
yes,
freaking
like
guy who runs the subreddit.
we do live in a brain broken, hyper vigilant, hyper productive society where hyper profit is the number one motive, and anything else that goes beyond that is falls into the water. It's
It's just like this is
I understand.
why people need to like try and educate themselves beyond just having reactionary viewpoints on stuff. Because like this guy, he probably like I don't know what his history of the subreddit, but made the subreddit and then it got popular and then just kind of rode the popularity to 1.6 million members and didn't really try and understand how to resolve the issue and was so like, oh, I just don't want to work in this capitalist society. But if you actually thought about it, you'd be like, oh, I don't capitalist problem. We need to change the way of how like our relationship to capital and our means of production. You could have had a totally different discussion, but like
Yeah.
liberal kind of like it comes across as lazy because how do you have a good opinion on this within like a capitalist framework? Like that's the thing. It's like it almost comes across as just like some bullshit argument. And it's obvious that Fox brought him on to make these people look lazy and stupid.
People are so like incapable of having like a nuanced conversation that they think like everything is on the other extreme, and mostly that's just like a straw man, to be honest with you. And like we can't expect anything less, anything more, anything less from Fox News.
Right.
So
But this guy got totally. I don't.
he got destroyed, and for there was some good reason. I mean, like to be frank, it's not the best.
It's not a very fleshed out kind of opinion.
No.
That doesn't mean you should be resting all the time or not putting effort into things that you care about. But I think one of the
What do you
issues
think is like a good work day? How many hours?
Which is like which is what I think like a lot of people, which is why I brought that quote up before. If given like some sort of like UBI or like they were free of work, they would like pursue more creative activity, or like they would do stuff like this. Like if I had like more time to like focus on like
right.
the show, for instance.
Well, so
if I wasn't bogged down with all the career shit,
dude, like think about what happened to all the philosophers. What happened to all the like poets? What happened
back when we used to like roam around and just eat grapes? Like we had time to write books.
Yeah, like so it's those kind of like lost occupations. Yeah, bard exactly. Like magicians, like like whatever, but like the whole thing is that like people my kind of idea of it like behind anti-work is not so people don't work. It's so that people can like aren't coerced to work and instead can dedicate their time to some noble cause that they chose to. Like there's always going to be lazy people. There's always going to be people who just choose not to do anything. But those exceptions are not a good reason to force everybody into freaking wage slavery.
Yeah, and some people are like also like physically debilitated. You have to understand that.
Well, that too, and I guess that kind of goes without saying. But even though there's that crazy article I could have pulled up about how they want to get the like quadriplegics to freaking take orders through robots. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like they're trying to get everybody to work. But I think he's just kind of misinterpreting the whole purpose of the anti-work. I mean, maybe this guy who made the subreddit, maybe he's dead serious that like nobody should work anymore. But I think the better way to kind of frame it is that people don't want to work meaningless jobs anymore. Like
I feel like it's a little bit more than that, but we'll listen to this.
Is a solid work day in your ideal society?
Sure. I mean, I think as much as people want. I mean, I personally work. I have like a 20-25 hour work week.
Do you think 20? How long do you think is the optimal work week?
So
Like
first off, you can't really survive on a 25-hour work week
with this pay, yeah.
So like I don't know, this guy's obviously making sacrifices in his life. No, but like I like.
Oh no, he lives with his parents. That's why.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like the whole idea of having the 15-hour work week seemed like a pretty noble goal. Like that, like
that's not bad. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Japan taking off of the 4 hour
the 4 day, yeah, and that's still a compromise in my opinion. You know,
What
like,
happened?
It's just like
that's still too much. Yeah, I still think it's too
I mean,
much.
like
that's a compromise.
Still looking at kind of the trajectory of how productive these corporations have gotten off the backs of workers while they're like been merging automation and human
and do
at
nothing.
the same time. Yeah, it's just
they make a couple phone calls a day and that's it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So I don't know. I think people should have the option to work. I don't want to put a number on it. I think work should be optional. I think like coercing people is not work. That's slavery. I don't care what job you're doing.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I think no. I honestly like 20 is like not a bad number per week.
Well, like here's the thing is like if you're sure you can put a number on that.
It's better than this shit. I'm working fucking 40 hours a week now.
You're still gonna have doctors and people in specialized occupations putting in like 80, 100 hours a week. People who work in hospitals are not working 20 hours a week. They're working way more. So like, I think putting a number
My
on
dad's alone from he puts in like 80, 90.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's kind of a difficult question, but yeah, I think that there's no reason for the most part people should have been able to get away with 15-hour work weeks. If like the government had stepped in and been like, listen, we're tired of everybody being worked to the bone, like we're enforcing, 20-hour, 15-hour work weeks, get it together, like what would happen? The companies would figure a way to automate that other 20 hours.
Well, the 40-hour work week itself was based on from the Great Depression era, and it was basically a compromise.
Yeah, wasn't the 40-hour work week? Wasn't that Henry Ford?
Yeah, it's basically like that. That's basically what was happening. Is like companies were just like overworking people, and they just set, like a certain the regular 9 to 5 as like a regular schedule.
Well, and they gave them the weekends too. I think that was like part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Henry Ford had something to do with 8-hour work week. I'm not sure on that.
I think so too.
But
wait, you're right. That might be the 8-hour work week, not the,
or 8-hour work day. Yeah, you're right.
Not the 40-hour work. Yeah. 8-hour work day, but
which I think is fairly good. So I would like less work hours.
And what do you do, Doreen?
It's a complete reactionary.
A dog walker. Okay.
Yes.
And how?
Yeah.
Which sounds like a
so
fun job.
Cringe though.
I want to do it so bad.
So cringe. Like make something up, man.
You'd say like you're like an office receptionist or something. I don't know. Even like Dick's Sporting
Dog walker. Come on, that's a fucking mobile app job.
That'd be more respectable than whatever that was.
So
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, this guy's just
Sure, I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay.
Oh, he's 30.
And is there something you want to do besides being a dog walker? Do you aspire to do
See,
anything
now
more than
I would make the argument with him right there that a job as a dog walker has more value than him spewing his propaganda bullshit 24/7.
True, that's true.
Like I would have made that argument and been like, so like it's like people who try and make bad arguments or like don't have respect for like a lot of like service jobs like the plumbers or the freaking trash man or stuff like that. Like, dude, those are the jobs where if everybody stopped doing those jobs, like the world would fall apart. So like him trying to freaking make that guy feel bad about walking dogs, like, yeah, maybe don't go on Fox News and tell people that you walk dogs for 20 hours a week. But you could still argue that like that job is like more fulfilling and has more meaning to the people who he's providing that service to than like whatever like hate spewed bullshit he spews fucking 40 hours a week.
Look at his face, right? This is the face of like pure devastation.
Or is that kind of your
Oh, that's so cringe.
This is like the pure like coping like
so cringe.
I love working with dogs. If I had to do this for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be super complaining. Dogs are wonderful animals. But I would love to teach. I would love to work with people.
Oh, he's just laughing at him.
Philosophy mostly, just introduction to philosophy, critical thinking, reason. Stuff.
They don't make any money
Dude.
at all. Yeah, I feel
He's
bad.
just laughing at him. Look at that shit-eating grin. He's like, got him.
I would love to take your class, Doreen. I would just
what an asshole.
be taking notes the whole time. And you know what? A professor's a very similar schedule than something that you're
an asshole.
imagining. So I think that actually might work perfectly for you. Listen,
look how nervous he is rocking his chair like
crazy. The greatest
crazy.
idea, but who am I to judge? To each their own.
He's like doing this fucking schizo like
yeah, he's like, man, I really tried to bomb this interview. Dog walker philosopher. It's like the guys are gonna roast me on the sub.
They say it's a free.
I'm gonna lose my mod privileges.
Country.
Sure.
Oh, so he's not even the guy who created the sub. He's just a mod.
I bet it gets worse. I bet it gets worse than that, too.
Dude, it's just so disingenuous. It's so like comparing. It's like there's definitely jobs out there. Like I would like the first to admit that my call center jobs were like totally unfulfilling, completely soul crushing. It should go away. Like people have every reason to hate me when I'm calling on behalf of fucking Comcast. So, or like Dish or like any of these companies. But like I wouldn't say like if that guy was arguing that he was like a dog walker, I would say your job probably makes you feel better and the people you help feel better than my job. So in that way, like a dog walker has more value than freaking me selling freaking internet service. So like, I don't know, man. And I guess that kind of goes back to like how we define labor these days, because it's just like trying to, I guess, qualify somebody's like what makes somebody's job more valuable to somebody else's is like kind of just a disingenuous thing to make anyway. Like a Fox News, what do you possibly offer to society as a Fox News host, Fox News anchor, that a guy who walks dogs doesn't make people just as happy? Like
the money is just like in entertainment, I guess. I mean,
it's a pretty bad grill. That guy was not prepared, and it just he kind of like highlights when you don't have when you have like a very surface level understanding of these kind of things that deserve more complexity to them, and then you go on Fox News and you're like, oh, I just want to work less and I'm a dog walker. Like, there's so many salient points to be made about the concept of it being anti-work and how like capitalism kind of fuels all these things that brought about an anti-work movement. It's just so unfortunate that like the people who with the biggest microphones have some of the shittiest takes ever. Yeah, you might as well put the Juggalo makeup on. Exactly. But what else we got here? So
I think that's like pretty much all the salient points I wanted to make. I mean, I'm just looking at whatever else you got here.
So there was that productivity versus real income graph. I could pull that up really quick, or if you want to pull that up. I mean, everybody's seen that a million times, but I think that also kind of goes to how out of control, like how unreasonable it is that our capitalist masters expect from us. Like productivity has gone up hundreds of exponentially since automation has been in place, and since what's the stuff right when Reagan got elected, that's when it all started going to shit.
Which link are you referencing?
Here, I guess I'll put this up. Check the private chat. but it just shows how we're putting more time in and we're working way harder than we ever have before. When you include like how automation has made it so we're able to be more efficient, but like our wages haven't increased at all. So, and this is something I guess we could bring up the video. I don't know if my audios want to work, but here, check this out and play this clip really quick from like 22 minutes. Hold on 1 second here. Start that video at 22 minutes. But Graeber, he's like literally quoting Marx, okay? And so I think this is like another part to kind of highlight where the capitalists are aware of how the system, how capitalism works. They know how the game's played. So even though if they're like using like kind of like they make their justifications using freaking Marx, like maybe they didn't deliberately, but like he wrote about all this shit. So we'll play this for might be a couple minutes here. He starts off a little bit before kind of building up his thesis, but when we talk about Marx, we'll stop and talk about it a little bit. So you can start up.
And it seems to me that what's really going on here is, I mean, they came a little late in the game. The shift had already started happening in the 50s and 60s. At the pace of technological change you see for much of the period of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century really slows down radically. People aren't noticing it because of all these things like the space program give people a sense that something very exciting is happening. But the moment we got to the moon before the Russians, there seemed to be this sort of sense of, okay, we don't have to do that anymore. And it's right after that, there's this huge shift of emphasis away from that kind of technology and towards precisely medical information sort of things. So I would like to make three arguments, as sort of takes the form of a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. One is that there seems to be a profound shift since the 70s from investment in technologies associated with the possibility of alternative futures to technologies that furthered labor discipline and social control.
Okay, that's a good point. Pause it really quick.
Now,
so he makes a really strong point right there that he'll get more into. This is a really long kind of lecture, so we're not going to go through all of it, but basically what he's saying is he thinks technology was kind of steered in a direction to kind of make it to kind of control us. So like the surveillance state, security, kind of all that stuff, where he's talking about this, I don't know, 10 years ago. And also as a means to actually make it so the capitalists make more money off of our backs. So using automation and technology to make us more efficient workers.
Now, as we can see, these guys actually were thinking about it. They're and talking about the sort of dangers of sort of uncontrolled technological development. They seemed to be very scared by the robot factories stuff. And I think one argument you could make, somewhat surprisingly, Marx has this elaborate argument that since value can only be extracted from human.
I feel like it was like always kind of like the Libby socialist type.
Graeber's an anarchist.
Yeah, he's definitely an anarchist.
But I mean, I don't know the stuff about the Russiagate stuff.
Yeah,
so that's kind of cringy, but I didn't know all about that.
The change in the organic composition of capitalism, mechanization, is going to create a declining rate of profit. I assume you all know the drill.
So play that over again.
It's quite possible that Marx.
15 seconds. That's a good point. I just want to play that whole little part about Marx over again, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, because he makes like just a really strong point there.
Is that furthered labor discipline and social control? Now, as we can see, these guys actually were thinking about it. They're and talking about the sort of dangers of sort of uncontrolled technological development. They seemed to be very scared by the robot factories stuff. And I think one argument you could make, somewhat surprisingly, Marx has this elaborate argument that since value can only be extracted from human labor, the change in the organic composition of capitalism, mechanization, is going to create a declining rate of profit. I assume you all know the drill. It seems to me that it's quite possible that Marx was right about this. What he was wrong about was that capitalists would do it anyway and continue to mechanize.
So
The case could be
that's the point. I think it's a really fucking strong point to make.
That's strong
because this also goes back to the point where like the capitalists know about class, they know theory, they know like what will happen if they mechanize everything. So like he's quoting Marx for the sake of the capitalists. Capitalists obviously are rabid anti-communists. So the idea that they can invoke Marx for their own ends shows that they're quite aware of what's going on. But to that point,
the Communist Manifesto was like itself, like it wasn't even really a description of communism. It was more so a critique of capitalism itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would agree with that.
You can't really,
but
that's why you can get quotes like this.
I know, because it's just like I started reading Capital, and Capital is just how to describe how capitalism works. It's not like communism at all. It's just explaining how capital works.
Yeah.
Capitalism. Yeah, exactly.
That's what.
But the major point here that I kind of like, I see where Graeber's coming from in this is that the capitalists figured out that if they completely automate everything, not only will that give us more time to kind of like be aware of our own demise, but it will actually drive down profits. So they're trying to, as long as possible. And the other thing they're saying is that like Marx foolishly thought that like the capitalists weren't going to automate anyway. So that's why we see that crazy spike in productivity, is because instead of automation making it so we're working less, the capitalists are figuring out ways to make us work more. So that's kind of where this contradiction comes in. So when we talk about like how AI is going to replace jobs, it's like I think we're right about that, and I think that's inevitable. But I think that there's going to be like a really weird shift that we're not ready for, whether that kind of like looks like feudalism. Something crazy is going to happen because they're going to use AI to replace it, and they know it's going to drive down their profits, and they're still going to have to do something with all the surplus labor or the like surplus humanity at that point. So I really don't know what's going to happen, because they like you see what's going on in Canada. They have the MAID program. They're like, we'll just kill you if you can't survive in capitalism. We'll just
or they'll
kill
fucking
you.
shut off your bank account if you support a protest you don't.
So like it's just going to be really interesting when AI is like inevitably replacing hundreds of millions of jobs. I think it's going to be hundreds of millions in our lifetime. Yeah, useless eaters, exactly. Derogatory, but not wrong. But I think we're going to see something crazy, and I don't know if that means that we're just going to see like late stage capitalism exist the rest of our lives, or if we're going to see something more like feudalism. But like there's going to be so many people that are going to be without work that it's not going to be something that they're just going to be able to kind of just, oh, they're just the homeless people. Like it's going to be like a problem where they're going to have to do something about it, like subsidizing, changing the means of production. Like it's going to be really bad. But I think Mark's making the point that like mechanized labor is something that like will drive down profits. It's a good point to make, and it is a reason why everybody's still working today as much as we are.
Yeah, that's sort of what I meant with like the self-checkout registers and the like having the face and like humanity there. I'm like sure the reason why they have someone manning the self-checkouts is so that there's a human being there.
I think that's part of it. Like I guess, and at this point, people are so used to seeing a person standing at those self-checkouts that like you'd probably get some like boomer or somebody who would lose their mind, be like, "Where's the person at the self-checkout?"
Yeah,
where it's like, oh my god, I'm supposed to do this all by myself, kind of like. So
I feel like, people are definitely like not oriented for that kind of technology yet, and like I feel like we're also like not even really necessarily close to like even being fully automated.
Well, like that video is like, it goes on for quite a bit. It's almost 2 hours long. I recommend everybody watches it. But like we could have, like, he talks about previous part of all that. He talks about how basically up until about 1970, there were like the previous generations kind of had this like wish list of stuff that was going to happen from science fiction, and those things kind of happened. And then
Oh yeah,
after the
Aldous
space,
Huxley, like he
yeah.
like pretty much.
But after the space race, he even kind of said like the Russian space program was the best thing that ever happened to the American space program, because the American space program, whether you believe they land on the moon or not, like they wouldn't have invested the technology if it weren't for the Russians investing in the technology. So, and then after that, it kind of went away. They're like, all right, we're just going to put all of our technology and put all the money into medicine and war, and a little bit to make it so our workers can be a little bit more productive. But it's nothing about making our lives easier.
No, we're just literally cattle, rent cattle to them.
So bad.
It's
so it's really unfortunate, because I even remember being a kid and being really kind of hopeful that technology was going to be kind of this amazing thing where it was going to make our lives easier. It was going to kind of like empower us to do more things. And like last couple of years, maybe it's just because like I'm more like attuned to kind of like the horrors of society and everything, but like I'm more fearful of technology than I was when I was a kid. And it's mainly because of like who the technocrats are who are controlling the technology, and those people are evil as fuck.
I feel like I've always been like the opposite. Like I was like, or rather, like I feel like I was always been aware, or like at least like somewhat afraid of like futuristic like technologies. I've always been aware of like sci-fi horrors and shit like that. But I never thought it would come this fast. I didn't think it would be in my lifetime like this, but it's getting scary fast, and it's coming like that.
Well, I really don't think people are ready for what like
No, not at all.
OpenAI and all that
Not
stuff
at
is going to
all.
do over the next few years.
We're not even close to being ready. Not even.
And
Welcome
like
to feudal society, everyone.
I mean, I don't see what's gonna like how can capitalism correct itself? Like this is like another thing that I think is like we get to the point where AI has displaced hundreds of millions of workers. They're just gonna make people like log into the metaverse all day and mine freaking Facebook coin or whatever.
That's what it is.
Like that's what's gonna happen. Sadly, like that's what's gonna happen.
Instead of
like,
instead of the slave mines like in real life, they ran out of resources. So like now you have to go mine.
No, they're gonna send you a freaking Oculus and you're gonna freaking mine for freaking
Instead of mining
coin.
in real life, now you're mining in the metaverse, bitch. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do?
I don't see how else. I don't see. Maybe I don't have the imagination to wonder
like
how.
A radical. I don't see it happening, but we need like a radical change in how because I don't know. I'm still in my 20s, and like I've just recently entered the working world. It is the most fucking miserable thing I've ever done in my entire life,
dude.
It's honestly
it's
worse than college.
Like, call centers are so soul crushing, and like the thing is about like, and I was actually talking to my girlfriend about this the other day. How like it doesn't even come down to like your skill at a particular job. Just go into the industry that's pumping out huge amounts of money, and you'll find your niche there. So like that's why I kind of went towards telecom, because it's like if you're gonna do sales somewhere, like I was always passionate about technology and it came naturally to me, so I just went in that direction. Like obviously with companies like Comcast and shit, they like pay people too much money to be basically accosting customers all day.
Yeah, you're just like constantly. I've done the call center shit. You're basically like cold calls are the worst shit because like you're literally like just harassing people to buy.
I mean, I never did cold calling, but like when I was at Dish, I did freaking retention, and that was awful because
those are the worst.
People calling to say they want to cancel their service, and you're talking to them sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes for an hour and a half, and being like, no, don't.
Yeah.
And it's like
I've gotten those calls before, and I've literally told them like to fuck off. Like it's like,
dude, it's just like, and the thing is like, there's good money to be made, but like after COVID, right when COVID happened, and this was like where my like brain started getting like short circuited on how like I like view work, is because like I was doing fine, making plenty of money, working on commission, like getting people to keep their TV service. But like as soon as COVID hit or the pandemic hit and everybody got sent home, I gotta be careful now because we're still on YouTube. When everybody got sent home, like everybody all of a sudden started calling in and being like, I can't pay my electricity bill. I can't pay for my food. I can't pay for my cell phone bill. Guess what I'm getting rid of? And I'm still like trying to argue with people. No, we'll send you an antenna. No, we'll put it on suspend for 3 months. No, we'll do this and that. And like going through that process. And then by the time, dude, it was so crushing. And meanwhile, my paycheck got dropped by like 80% because like people are like, no, I'm canceling. Like I have no money because like I'm not allowed to go to the office anymore. Like total nightmare. But like it made me like, I guess up until that point, I could see myself as a salesperson, was able to kind of like separate myself from like the customer on the other end. But then like through COVID and then kind of like just like challenging myself with like learning about that without like, we're on YouTube, so I'm not going down that rabbit hole, but like learning about it, like I started to kind of like get a perspective where I was like, wow, these people are like one paycheck away from being like, I can be one paycheck away from being in the same position that they're in, and I'm like harassing them over like a freaking $80 freaking television bill when they can't pay for their electricity or water. Like, fuck me.
It pits you against your neighbor. I mean, that's what that's why it has like that inverse relationship. It's not even productive labor. It's literally labor.
Well, yeah. And that's kind of like, that's like the like added insult to injury beyond just being like a bullshit job, is that you're actively antagonizing people.
Yeah.
So like you're actually creating like a really toxic culture for people at the same time. So I can make, $30-$40 an hour. Ugh, it's just so bad.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I couldn't describe it as bullshit years ago. But like, I even had a friend who told me years ago, he's like, the only reason we have these jobs is because every other call center has these jobs. Like, it'd be so easy if people could just be like, my bill's too expensive, and just push a button and get like their reward. But that's not what they do. It's just, I don't know, man.
Have to rake up the
I like, it sucks that I have almost 20 years of sales experience under my belt, and I haven't figured out yet how to like kind of channel that into something that's a little bit more productive for people. I know how to manipulate the fuck out of people. I know how to get into people's heads.
That's I mean, that could be a valuable skill, if you use it for good in the sense that is. I mean, no, really. I mean, like we could do like communist propaganda, or I forgot your name.
Funny. I agree with a lot of what Mark had to say. I just like it ends at the part of like keeping the state.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Brad saying he worked collections for a summer.
Oh, geez.
That would be awful. And like I've actually done something like that. I did instead of collections, I actually did like debt repair. So people would call in with actually absolutely trashed credit scores, and my job would get them to like enroll a program where they would pay like X amount of money every month to like repair their credit. Just like, but man, collections, that's got to be like one of the worst ones. Although like I've talked to people who said they made decent money, and that's like another funny thing about like commission jobs, kind of spell out the theory, like the labor theory of value to agents without telling them, because they're basically saying that we'll reward you with some extra money that we already made on top of you for doing your job. They're like, oh, we see you're making all this freaking money for the company. We'll give you some of that back because you did such a good job for us,
Yeah.
Oh, like, and Brad, again, like by the time like retention, the funny thing, so at the time I was married before COVID hit, and I actually like convinced my ex at the time to get a retention job too, because it's like great money, and like she had a really hard time with it. She couldn't hack it, and like it was right during COVID hit, so she couldn't hack it. And then like even I was like, fuck this. Like, no, I knew people cry all the time at call centers, all the time. People walking out, people just like having like, and the other thing is like they try and schedule your breaks. They try and make it so you can't get out of your seat, and you have like so many times in between calls. So like if you have a really hard time with somebody and you're like really struggling with a sale, or like somebody's like breaking down and like had like a death in the family or all this crazy stuff, they'll give you a hard time because you like wanted to go outside and get some fresh air. Hey, you're over your work. You're over your like auxiliary time. Fuck you. This lady told me that she just like had her husband die and needed to cancel her service. Like it's just like the most soul crushing, most soul crushing shit. Yeah, like, and another one. Thank you, Cynic. That's another one. Like pushing items. Yeah. So even like in customer service, they'll try and get people to freaking do add-ons at the end, and now they're basically trying to make you salesy anyway.
Or even like there's even like fake charities, like not even like necessarily like fake charities, but there's like call centers with like I had a friend who did this once. It was like a call center that set up donations for like charities to like military and like cops and shit like that.
Like the worst charities.
Yeah. So it was like the firefighters guild or some shit, like the policemen's guild or some cops and fucking military, or the veterans guild, veterans or group, whatever the fuck. And you're basically calling people, cold calling them. Some of the time you're calling back the same people, but like you're basically forcing them to get like into like monthly donations into this charity that they're pocketing like maybe 70% of.
Yeah, that's like one of the big scams of charity is like maybe they only get like freaking 5% of the actual money before
never
it all
those
goes
guilds. Don't go to those.
Mages or Thieves Guild.
Yeah. All right, you want to wrap things up here?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was like the article on Polywork, but like, I guess I'll pull that up really quick just because it's kind of funny.
Okay.
Unless you want to pull it up really quick, the Polywork thing. But I just wanted to kind of I just threw this in really quick because like this kind of goes back to kind of like the grind set culture and trying to get people to work to death. Like it used to be a thing. Like it didn't always used to be a thing where like you were being encouraged to work multiple jobs at the same time. That wasn't always a thing. And now you kind of feel like obligated to work multiple jobs at the same time. Or the other one that's like particularly depraved that I don't like is like if you have a skill that you're good at and you do it because you love it, there's like kind of this like compulsion or like you're kind of encouraged now to try and monetize anything that you have good, any sort of skill you have. So you can't even enjoy the hobbies that you have anymore without somebody being like, why don't you sell that shit on Etsy? So it's just kind of like, I just kind of wanted to say that like, it's not just like a few TikTokers that are like, kind of like, or crypto bros are pushing this idea that we need to like work to death. Like it is actually like a propaganda that's being filtered through media to give us the idea that we need to work more. And this is in lieu of paying us more money. They're like, nope, we're not going to pay you more money. Instead, you should work more hours. You should work more jobs. That's the problem.
I always see these articles where it's like not like all the time, but like every once in a while, like it's like sometimes you just need that extra job, that second job to pick up to feed your family and kids, which doesn't seem like the most functioning society. Really,
not at all. But these guys are so freaking greedy, man. They're so greedy.
Yeah.
Brad's quote, if you're not making a living off of whatever passion you have, you're bad at it, is one of the most toxic aspects of capitalist society. I would completely agree with that. Like, and that kind of goes to my, I know we have a little bit of disagreements about anti-work and stuff like that, but that's why I don't really buy into like the idea of work as a virtue or like everybody needs to work, because then you are kind of getting into a situation where people who are doing things that they love or things that they maybe loved at one time, once that turns into a job, maybe they don't love it anymore. And that's like a sad thing to watch.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I don't think like everybody needs to work, but like getting rid of the idea of like certain types of labor, like I'm thinking like it doesn't have to be
like most industrialized jobs could go away. Like for sure. No reason why we couldn't automate that away. I would think most service sector jobs, other than people
So the biggest problem is delivery jobs. So you would need a way. I mean, perhaps self-driving cars.
Yeah, they're kind of getting there, and like there's some other ways. I've seen this thing in LA where they just like have little like ground drones that drive around. Like I've seen different.
But they would need to
things.
get rid of the trucking industry, which is like the worst. Like that's like the most amount of American jobs.
Yeah, that's true. And that's something that kind of gets thrown around every once in a while. Tesla working on the electric, like semi, and like they're trying to like kind of replace it, but that's going to be a big issue when it happens, because that's like how many people are employed into trucking? Hundreds of thousands of people. I wonder.
Tons. It's like 30% at least.
Damn.
Most people.
So yeah,
get
that's
CDL.
What's that?
Most people who like don't graduate like get their CDL and they just become a truck driver.
You can make tons of money. You can make good money. You can make 6 figures.
Some people like it too. Some people just like driving cross country. It's not a terrible job.
Again, also, I wouldn't say trucking is a bullshit job either. Like,
no,
there's definitely a lot of value in it.
That's one of the most important sectors of our economy.
For sure.
Is delivery.
Yeah.
Delivery of goods and services. But that's the analysis here. Do you have something to say?
No, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up. I think we kind of gave kind of like a high level overview of some of these points, and I think it's just good to keep in mind how all this stuff kind of fits together, and
how basically none of this is real. All the economy is completely fake. Jobs are fake. Everything you do.
Yeah, that's the real takeaway, is that like every other person you run into is working a fake job. Everyone.
This is coming from two wages. And you're hearing the truth because you're hearing it from fellow wages. So I hope
that's absolutely true.
I hope all the wages in their chat enjoy their KGs tomorrow. Before you leave tonight, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. You can hit that notification bell for more videos that come out, more streams from other folks in the network who are doing things up this week. So if you can, that'd be great. We'll
appreciate you all for listening tonight.
Monday at 9:30. Catch y'all. Good night.